Hello and welcome to episode 25 of Creative Walks. And in this episode, I will be much less philosophical, or I'll try to be, and be much more practical with some advice and thoughts for people in creative fields. It features a cautionary tale about doing business with friends and how to avoid disasters and make these projects work. I actually started thinking about this last month when my nephew, who is in film school, asked me some advice because he is opening a video production house in Brazil, and I was giving him some business advice and trying to tell him how to deal with clients, how to do contracts, and all those intertwining elements that happen when you are beginning a business. As a photographer and a musician, I have worked with hundreds of clients and people throughout the years, and I know quite a bit about what should be included in disagreements with clients, what are the expectations, and most of those things I learned, like most creative types, the hard way. And the funny thing is that even when you know better, you do not listen to your own advice, and today I wanted to share a story about one of such times. So it is specifically about dealing with friends when you're doing business with them. Yesterday, I had to terminate a collaboration with a friend, and I was, to be honest, very, very upset with it. I was angry and frustrated, and I won't go into the specific details of the deal, but here's the general view of the situation so we can talk about it, and I will talk about the mistakes that I made and the lessons that I learned. So a few months ago, a friend approached me to create a new project. It would be a long-term project in video, and after we discussed the details of the business and the vision he had for it, I realized I didn't want to do it. It was both an analysis of the situation and a feeling I had about going into business with him. And I thought that the numbers didn't work and my thinking was not in line with his vision for the business. There was nothing specifically wrong with the way he was thinking about it, it's just not the way I would do it, and I know that over time that would become an issue. I did, however, decided that I wanted to help the guy get started with the project, so we made a deal where I would create with him some videos and we settled the details about shooting dates, how payment work, but that was done all during this informal talks, nothing really on paper. Mistake number one. So we created part of the content that we had agreed on, but there was a problem, like a little disaster during production, and the last part had to be postponed. Then months passed and suddenly the project was back on, but the communications and expectations on both parts got really weird very fast. So I decided to not go through with the project. It was not worth it. That meant time and money lost, actually on both parts. And I think all that problem happened because I didn't treat this as a proper business transaction, as I do with most of my other projects, and I let the friendship get into the way of both business and art making. To sum up the situation from my point of view, I will quote a Brazilian writer and poet called Mário Quintana, and he said that, "I haven't even started helping you and you're already screwing with me." So instead of complaining and getting upset and bitter about it, I decided to turn this experience into a learning one, both for myself and for you if you ever get into this kind of situations, which I'm sure you will as a creative person. So I organized my thoughts and I decided to share the lessons learned. So here it goes. When you're in the beginning of your career, it's very common to get jobs and collaborations with friends, and that is a great thing. Even later in your journey, you will find cases where you will see all sorts of opportunities come to you and the chance to partner with amazing people. And they will often either be or become your friends. As creative professionals, we all know we should have contracts and agreements in place, but we are certainly averted to it, especially when it's not like you as a small business owner dealing with a big company. When it's you with another creative professional or with a friend or with a client, we sort of take that much more loosely. So very often we'll do jobs for friends, and for some reason, when dealing with friends, it's like we become amateurs again. I think it's because when we first get into creative fields, can be, photography or dance or design or whatever, cake making, whatever thing you are doing creatively, you do it because you want to play. It's your playground and you are blessed with the opportunity to make that into a career. And you want to play with ideas and experiences and have fun making things and putting them into the world. And then when you get a chance to work with friends on that, it's like you feel in the playground again. And you feel that your friend shares your values, your work ethic, and you assume they have, because you're friends, your best interests in mind. And whatever problem comes can be solved because, of course, we're friends, right? So basically you assume everything will go well. And when it does, it's great. The problem arrives when there is a mismatch of expectations. And usually you were not aware of these expectations when you made the deal with your friend. Usually you learn about those expectations when they are violated. And that can bring a lot of frustration. How can that person not see their mistakes, how they're acting is wrong? But the truth is this: you cannot expect people to be reasonable. And that is because you haven't determined what reasonable is. You haven't put it down on paper. You haven't really talked about it. You assumed that certain manners, certain rules of engagement that you have subconsciously will be a part of the zeitgeist of everyone. But even in large corporations that have dealings with seasoned professionals, they deal with what's reasonable being put in a contract. That's what a contract is for. That's what an agreement is for. And that is why when you are working with friends, you should treat that relationship as business, because it is. For example, what happens if there is a change in plans? Who pays for what? What if the project gets postponed, which was the case in mine, or canceled? If you're a creative professional giving deliverables, giving content, how many revisions there will be? Who has final say in what comes out? What is exactly expected of you and your partner? And very importantly, what's the timeline? What's the payment deadline? What is actually agreed upon? And what I realized from this situation that I had is that it is your job as a creative professional to know those things. That is on you. And your client or your friend, they actually may not know all the things that can go wrong. That's your job. Like, as a photographer, sometimes people come to me, oh, can you do this or can you do that? And they think it's going to be a very straightforward a process, just like most clients think. And then there's all these things that have to be considered about it. And it's your job to educate your client about this. It is expected that they will not know. And it's your job to inform them. Actually, it was a physicist, Niels Bohr, that said that an expert is one that has made all the possible mistakes in a very narrow field. That's you. So it is your responsibility to foresee worst-case scenarios. Not because you expect them to happen, but it's because your job, both as a professional and as a friend, to make all possible problems clear and have a plan to deal with them. If you are like mid-career in your journey, you probably know all those things. I certainly know it, and over the years I got fairly decent at explaining to clients all the things that go behind the scenes about making photos or videos or music. But in the case of my friend, who is a fellow creative professional, I threw that out the window. There were a lot of signs early on that there would be problems, but I actually chose to ignore it because they're friends, right? And the problem is, given my personality being a very agreeable person, I'm always trying to be nice, very trying to accommodate everything. And that included more and more things like expectations on schedules, on how quickly you reply, and on and on and on. But the thing is that people learn from your behavior. So my mistake was not to tell right away, okay, this is not how we're playing, this is not what we agreed upon, this is how we're going to do this. And then over time, I felt I was actually being taken advantage of my generosity because I felt I was doing the person a favor. And it got to a point where I could not do it anymore, so I decided to cut my losses and most likely ruin the friendship as well. So here's what I learned from this ordeal, and I hope it will be useful for you. First and foremost, if you get into a project, into a creative project with a friend, and things go wrong, you should not get bitter and sad and distrustful and lose your faith in humanity. But you should remember this, that you should always be professional, even with friends, maybe especially with friends. Also, do not blame the other person. I've been learning a lot about this concept of total ownership, this idea presented at least to me by Jocko Willink, which is you take full ownership of the problem. You are the professional, you are the leader. You should consider yourself responsible, even if on the outside it seems like the problem was created by another person. And that has a very practical reason. It's not mea culpa. It's if you blame the other person, there is no learning experience for you, aside from not working with that person again. But what you should think is, how could I have dealt with that situation better? That's the key. Most of all, after you go through a problem like this, it's the perfect time to write down for yourself what the problem was, where you went wrong, and that could have been, I should have fired the client. But you should consider all the steps that you need to take in order not to have this happen again. Put it on your wall, write on your leg, whatever you need to do to make it stick. That's something that I am working on and something that I certainly will try to do more diligently after this incident. The other thing, and very, very important, is that you should always have a contract or some sort of agreement. If there is money involved, doesn't matter how much it is, or even if you're doing things for free and you're like volunteering your time, there should be some sort of written agreement. I know that may sound very formal and bring some discomfort to you. I don't want to throw like a contract in my friend, but that's at your own risk. And to me, that means you are not a full professional yet. You do not expect a lawyer or a doctor or a dentist to go look at your stuff and not do through the proper channels. Actually, you would feel very badly if they just, let me take a look at you on your living room, right? So put everything in writing. And incidentally, that doesn't mean that you just send your friends something to sign, because of course they're not going to read. That means you have to walk them through the process. This will happen, then we'll create this, and I will do this, and you will do that, and this will be the amount of money that will be paid. If there is this problem, we'll solve it this way. If there's a problem we haven't foreseen, we'll talk about it this way. We'll engage it in this and this and that way. Basically, all the things you expect to do with a client, you will do with your friend, because he suddenly became your client. Finally, let me recommend to you a fantastic and hilarious lecture by designer Mike Monteiro called, it's a curse word and this is a clean podcast, so it's FU Pay Me. You can Google it, or you can take a look at the show notes in this episode at pedrobonatto.com/creativewalks. I put a link to the lecture there. It's about 38 minutes and I assure you, whatever level you are in your creative journey, it will be very useful for you to think about taking your creative pursuits professionally. So I hope you found this little rant useful. Let me know if you have any questions, and I would love if you would share this with your friends or people that you think might benefit from it. And I would love to hear your experiences and if you have any tips regarding dealing with friends. I certainly would love to hear from you. And finally this time, I would encourage you to take your art seriously by taking your business seriously. As I think Ronald Reagan, the American president, said, trust but verify, and protect yourself. And that is not a selfish thing to do. By protecting yourself, you protect your art practice, your fans, your other clients, and you even protect your true friendships. So with that, I'll leave you and I'll talk to you tomorrow.